What's going on, guys? My name is RBG, and if you're familiar with some of the content I produce, you know I'm a huge Berserk fan. For the past few months, we've been reporting on rumors swirling around the internet that Netflix might be coming out with a new Berserk anime. From some of the interviews Adi Shankar gave to companies like Forbes to Twitter posts that seem to be alluding that Netflix was very interested in adapting a new Berserk series in the near future. This internet buzz really got the community talking, like it really has a lot of fans invested, especially considering the fact that the same producer behind Castlevania series is adamant about bringing Berserk back to a more classical style in animation. Like, I don't know why the anime gods have shunned this series so much. It's bad enough we had to worry about when the manga will go on hiatus, but it's even worse when we can barely even make it past the Falcon of the Millennium arc without getting piss poor animation. So while there was talk of this Netflix Berserk anime being an actual thing, the future still looked dire, because we know that the anime industry can be very tricky when it comes to adaptations. But it looks like there is more information that indicates that we'll be getting a new Berserk series from Netflix sooner than we think. But before we talk about that, I want to remind the viewers that this video is sponsored by Beautiful Halo. If you're a man or woman of culture who loves anime, games, and dank memes, then I highly recommend checking out their merch. They have a wide variety of stylish hoodies and other cool apparel that'll have your friends mad jealous. By simply using this promotional link, you get $5 off of any $49 purchase or higher. So slide on over to beautifulhalo.com. The link will be in the description. So as I mentioned earlier, we had gotten word that this new Berserk series could possibly be in the works through some negotiations. Last November, Castlevania producer Adi Shankar briefly mentioned his interest in properly adapting Berserk with 2D animation if someone got him the rights. And Netflix held a poll on their Twitter asking fans which guts they prefer out of Berserk and Kill la Kill. Now, although the voting poll seemed to be nothing more than a post to get some silly engagement, it managed to perpetuate more speculations on if Netflix was down to do a Berserk anime. This idea was further cemented when Adi Shankar, one of Netflix's own, got in the conversation saying, and I quote, "I think we already know my answer to this. Hashtag not another Golden Age arc." So as you can see, this tweet only added more fuel to the fire of hype. Adi Shankar seems like a man who's in tune with the anime genre, and he pretty much stated what we all think, that we shouldn't have to tread backwards with Berserk in regards to its arcs, particularly the Golden Age arc. A chapter in Berserk that's been adapted twice in a series and movie format. I know fans are just ready to see something different, and if a studio is going to go backwards, then it's only right that they do it with the first story in the Berserk canon, with the Black Swordsman arc. That's been a chapter that gets shafted out since it thrust the viewer into the fray of chaos with little explanations given. In my honest opinion, kicking things off the Black Swordsman arc would really work. Introducing newcomers to the world of Berserk with the cursed enigma that is Guts would only motivate them to look more into the series. Currently, Netflix has the streaming rights to the Golden Age films, so it will be nothing for them to recommend it as a guide for people who want to fill in the gaps. But anyways, we didn't hear any more ramblings regarding the adaptation for months. That's until yesterday when Netflix went to their Twitter page to announce that they made a deal with a certain comic book company to adapt their works into films and TV series. The tweet starts off as a throwback referencing all the projects they worked on previously with Dark Horse Comics. Shows like the Umbrella Academy live adaptation and the comic iteration of Stranger Things were mentioned, references that all segued into this. Very happy to announce that Netflix has closed an overall deal with Dark Horse Comics. That means Netflix will have first look at all Dark Horse titles for both film and TV projects, and I'm really trying to keep my cool about it, but yes. This was some great news because Dark Horse Comics has some awesome material to work with, and Netflix has been pretty consistent with representing their adaptations from a story and production standpoint. If there's one thing you can count on them to do, it's put a pretty hefty budget up to make sure that everything looks great in their shows and films. They basically give you that cinematic experience without having to leave your home. Anyways, after we got that news, a certain demographic of fans immediately started retweeting this post. And that was the Berserk community, because if you didn't know, Dark Horse has been one of the co-publishers of the Berserk manga since 2003. And they just started releasing these super duper deluxe versions of the manga in larger prints a few months ago. So similar to the last time Netflix made a tweet remotely even associating to Berserk, fans started speculating that they're alluding to this new series actually happening. There were noticeably a lot of Hellboy and other Dark Horse related responses in the Twitter thread, but the Berserk fandom outnumbered them in droves. Now, while there was a lot of optimistic feedback about Berserk potentially getting an anime adaptation by the same people that did Castlevania, there were just as many livid fans who didn't want to see this happen. Some stated that they didn't necessarily like the Castlevania series because the story was somewhat lackluster, and while the animation was for the most part good, it was pretty inconsistent. And I kind of get where they're coming from. Like, Castlevania isn't necessarily the perfect adaptation that follows the source material beat by beat. As someone who's familiar with Castlevania's writer Warren Ellis's works, I instantly noticed that he was doing things he's constantly done with his other works, like turning Trevor Belmont into the typical misanthrope and making Cypher this feisty woman who doesn't take shit from anyone. Those are tropes that Warren Ellis loves injecting into his main protagonist. And the animation, while top notch, I will say it was a little clunky at times. Sometimes certain animation scenes had these funky frames, but I think it's largely due to the studio Powerhouse Animation not being too good at that anime style. And I also think they had to use the Japanese key animators they hired sparingly. But other than that, I think Netflix and the producers did a pretty good job with what they had to work with. It looks like Castlevania isn't going to go anywhere anytime soon since they've been confirmed for a new season, and Adi Shankar is going to be following suit with his Netflix Devil May Cry anime adaptation he announced last year. I think that's safe to assume that's why we didn't see him reply to the tweet regarding the big announcement with Netflix and Dark Horse like he did with the other tweet last year, because he's too busy working on the new season of Castlevania and the new DMC anime. Another reason why some of the fans weren't too keen on Netflix acquiring the rights to Berserk is because Netflix has been producing a lot of animes that are CG animated. You have the Ultraman series that's probably one of the few CG animes that's received a warm reception, typically because Ultraman is a live action series anyways. We have the Aijin Demi-Human films that were some of the first CG animated anime produced by Netflix. And you have the controversial Saint Seiya Knights of the Zodiac CG anime, which has gotten a lot of backlash since that style of animation has become a little oversaturated on the platform. That's essentially what has a lot of fans worried, not to mention that not all Netflix's adaptations come out good, let alone decent. Fans are still hurting from seeing that Death Note live action adaptation, and we saw how bad that turned out. And admittedly, I am not looking forward to their new live action Cowboy Bebop movie. But I think it's important to understand how Netflix works, because a lot of people think that Netflix is fully involved with the way they produce their shows, and that couldn't be any further from the truth. Netflix is essentially the big wig that foots the bill for the content being produced on their platform. Like, they usually don't make a lot of creative decisions when it comes to their shows, since that would be too time consuming for them. So they form a partnership and distribution agreement with companies. The companies come up with the way in which they go about producing and directing those said shows and the style in which they want the shows to be in. This is essentially why Netflix can choose to sever relationships with companies like Marvel, because even though Marvel may have directed and filmed the shows, Netflix still paid for the production costs. Same can be said for animes they acquired that are considered Netflix originals. They hire Japanese anime productions to work on new series for them, and sometimes these series may have already been in the works and distributed through another company, so the styles in the animation usually depend on the animation studios, not Netflix. Now, even though Netflix isn't largely at fault for how much CG anime gets produced on their service, I think they tend to enable the studios to get away with this business practice, because they're willing to shell out a ton of money. Usually when an anime is produced, that company works in tandem with other companies for distribution rights and funding. This is one of the reasons why animation teams don't make a lot of money in their field of work. But Netflix seems to be more than generous when paying anime studios, and they choose to take on all of the fundings. So considering the fact that CG animation is less costly as well as less time consuming, the studios may choose to produce their animes that way so they can make back twice as much money as they put into the projects. I'm not saying that's the case, but it really seems like that's what a lot of Japanese animation studios are doing when it comes to working with Netflix, because they know Netflix will pay them a wad of money for something that's half-assed. Thankfully, there's still some studios out there who are passionate about putting their all into anime projects. Companies like TMS with Baki and Science Saru with their Devilman Crybaby series are living proof that 2D animation is here to stay. And I think if Adi Shankar is still on board with producing a Berserk anime, he'll get a Japanese studio to animate it how he and the fans want it. Currently, Netflix has 5 anime production houses who are contractually obligated to produce shows that are exclusive to their streaming services, and 2 of the most noteworthy ones includes Bones and David Productions. If Adi Shankar didn't roll with Powerhouse Animation like he did with Castlevania, then Bones or David Productions would be awesome picks. Studio Bones has animated awesome anime like Space Dandy and Eureka 7, and David Productions has been killing it with their JoJo Bizarre Adventure anime. Like, their JoJo series is probably the best anime adaptation I've seen in recent years, and the animation quality continues to improve with every arc they do. So David Productions would be one of the candidates I would choose, especially considering that they're pretty much done with their latest season of JoJo. Now, if there's one thing fans really want done right, it's the language option. Like, I know a lot of Japanese sub purists out there were talking trash about Netflix because Castlevania was only in English and it doesn't have a Japanese dub, at least in the West. So they're assuming that this may be the case if Netflix produces a Berserk anime. I'm more so concerned if the original English voice actors from the 90s series and Golden Age movies will come back, because they didn't reprise their roles in the 2016 series. I think it had something to do with Crunchyroll not hiring the voice director from the old series to come back, so the old voice cast declined to return. Hopefully Netflix and Adi Shankar could work something out and bring those guys back to voice their roles. I will be completely set if they can make that happen. But with all that said, I'd like to end this video. What are your thoughts on this new partnership with Netflix and Dark Horse Comics? Do you think the relationship will extend further and we could potentially get a new Berserk anime? Or do you think it isn't going to happen anytime soon until Netflix works out a deal with Berserk's other publishers like Haku Sensha? Let me know in the comments below. As always, I ask that you like or dislike the video. It doesn't have to be a thumbs up, it can be a thumbs down. Any feedback is good feedback and will only help me improve on my channel. But if you really enjoyed this video, it would help me out tremendously if you shared it on social media outlets with all your friends and followers. Sharing really makes a difference. But this is your boy RBG signing out on another video. I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.